welcome to this episode of Unraveling the Veil with your host, Yara Rose, also known as Katie Mosier from the yararose.com website. That is YARAROSE.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Unraveling the Veil. I am, as always, so excited to have you here. I have a quote from Brene Brown on my website, and it's the first thing that you'll see when you check it out. And it says, "As unique as we all are, an awful lot of us want the same things. We want to shake up our current less than fulfilling lives. We want to be happier, more loving, forgiving, and connected with the people around us." And I truly, honestly believe that. I believe that if you stripped away all of our personal preferences, expectations, and our ego's desire for control and not changing anything, we discover we have a lot in common with each other and we could be a more loving, compassionate community as a whole. And one of those things that every single living organism on this earth experiences the same is a death in some way. If they're alive, they must somehow die. And today's episode is about trying to comprehend that subject of death and what dying is. In 2019, I posted a blog post about death and if it's final. And I want to share that with you now because I don't think everyone has read my blogs, and I feel like it's kind of the beginning to what I'm going to be talking about, or at least it's one of the puzzle pieces that I have about it. So it was posted on May 12th, 2019, and it's titled, "Is Death Final?" I used to be terrified of death and dying. Don't get me wrong, I'm not jumping through hoops to wait in the death line, but I have begun to shift my perspective on dying. I no longer think that the family that has passed away is unreachable to those family members that are still living. Being raised Catholic, I was fortunate enough to not be told that death was the end of all things. That was never a fear of mine. Instead, if you had lived a good life and followed the rules, you could someday make it to heaven. Heaven, to me, was portrayed as a place that basically had everything that your human mind could dream up as amazing. Your soul returned to looking at its peak condition, and everyone was joyful, happy, and friendly to each other. Basically, it was a huge, never-ending party with lots of peace and joy. The souls in heaven could look down at us living beings and keep watch over us. As a child, though, it seemed to me like heaven was so far away, way up high in the sky, somewhere that living beings could never reach. Therefore, once our family member passed away, it felt so final. It was an adios until you joined them in death. Now my feelings regarding where souls go when they leave their physical bodies has changed and will most likely continue to change as I keep learning and exploring this subject further. I no longer feel as though my deceased grandparents are unreachable, stuck up high beyond the clouds watching over us but not able to communicate. I feel like they are right here, living in some kind of alternate plane of existence, right beside us. I feel like if you open your mind to the possibilities that exist, you still can communicate with them in a different way. I believe they can hear us whenever we need them to. They can communicate back some sort of message through various means. You just have to pay attention and be open to receiving the messages. As part of my healing process, I've been having monthly sessions with a psychic medium over the last year. That has really opened my eyes to the possibilities that are still there for communication with deceased loved ones. My grandparents have communicated messages to me in several ways throughout the last year. Sometimes it's through animals, nature, and a little synchronicity occurrences that are too related to be coincidences. Sometimes it's the flickering of lights, knocking noises, footsteps, direct telepathic communications, or even messages through my spirit animal tarot card deck. Not everyone will believe you that these are ways of them communicating with you, but that's okay. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. My own family has challenged me on some of these occurrences, to which I respond, how do you explain the sounds of footsteps walking across your kitchen floor when everyone that is home is sitting downstairs with you? How do you explain the randomly flickering lights when your electrically trained spouse has tested and retested the light fixtures and bulbs and found nothing amiss? They don't all fully believe me, which is perfectly fine. Some of you reading this, or hearing this in this case, may not believe me either, and that's fine as well. My goal is not to convert them or you to all think just like me. I just want to share my perspective with everyone in case anyone else can learn from it or find it comforting and enlightening. Like I said, this was written in 2019, and my belief on the subject has only grown exponentially to believe that our loved ones are right here. They can see anything, they can see everything. They're with us for all of the big moments, they're with us for all of the moments that we need them. They're literally a thought away. And I want to give an example too, because I'm going to talk about a couple things and then I'm going to say the same thing again. When you hear me say that again, I want you to think back to this example and how I'm talking from personal experience and not wishful thinking. But I want you to know that it's true. As far as my experience, it is completely true. And I have personally experienced it. My loved ones have personally experienced it. And I want you to have the opportunity, if you so choose, to experience it yourself. Because when it comes to this topic, I know firsthand that when you experience a sign and you think, oh my gosh, I think that was from Joe who passed away, 20 years ago, da 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 da. And your self-doubt immediately goes, oh, come on, really? Like he's really going to send you that? And then you talk yourself out of believing in these signs. But I believe that you can truly feel them in your heart of hearts. You know whether it's Joe from 20 years ago or not. And if you can go with what your heart says in that very instant when you have that reaction, then I urge you to do that. And I urge you not to let your ego, your self-doubt, your neighbors, your friends talk you out of what you know in your heart to be true. So I'm going to share an experience with you for a couple of reasons. A, I want you to kind of see how this can show up in real life. And B, I don't want any of you to think that the only way you can communicate with the other side is to go to a psychic medium, because that's not the case. Your loved ones know you. You guys have a relationship. That relationship does not end when they pass away. It's still there. And they will try to communicate things to you in a way that has meaning between the two of you. And sometimes that's just something that you can feel more than any psychic medium could feel. I mean, I am perfectly fine with psychic mediums. I think they do a great job. And I do love how they validate your feelings, because sometimes it is really nice to be like, okay, these are all the signs I'm getting. I think it's from this person. And then just to have that other validation of course it's from them, but in a serious way that you can feel. Energy does not lie. You can feel whether that person can actually correspond with your loved ones or not. You could feel the authenticity of that. And I want you to always keep that in mind with whoever you speak to, is that you yourself can feel the energy. You yourself can feel when something is off and when something's right on. Don't discount your feelings. Don't discount that inner knowing, that intuition that we all have. Okay, so my story is about my aunt. She was feeling a little down because when she got married, both of her parents had already passed away. My grandma had indicated that she will give my aunt a sign on her wedding day that she is going to be there, that she will be there, and that she will know she's there by the sign. But she didn't tell me what the sign was going to be, because she wanted my aunt to experience it and just know for herself. She didn't want it to have to go through me. She wanted her to know. And it was so funny because during the wedding ceremony, which was held outside, this big breeze came up out of nowhere and knocked some leaves down over my aunt. And it was at that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. And then later on, I think it was a couple days later, my aunt asked me, she's like, did you notice that part? She's like, I know that was my mom. That was my mom. That was her sign for me. And I was like, yeah, it's so awesome when you can see something, when you can experience it, and when you know for yourself that that just happened and it was caused by this. And how awesome is that? I think that's just the greatest thing ever. And I don't want anyone to discount their own feelings when they have something like that. I want you to know that your grandparents, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your daughters, anyone, whoever it is, when you have that feeling, it's them. It's them trying to let you know, hey, I'm here. I'm part of this. I'm here. I'm not missing out on anything. What's interesting is when souls pass away, or I call it then they do that transition to the non-physical, they can see things through your eyes. They can see things through your experiences. And they actually can kind of understand you better in some ways than they ever did before. because they're not seeing through their own fears and their own perceptional lenses. They're seeing it as it is through yours, and they're viewing you through with their pure soul now instead of through their own filters. And it's amazing how much more loving and vibrant and awesome that connection can actually be when they transition. What I would really like is for us to view death in a way that's not quite so scary, not quite so final. And I want you to keep that in mind as I say this next part. On February 18th, 2024, 2 police officers and a paramedic were shot and killed in a Twin City suburb while servicing their country. They were called to a home that had an armed gunman and several people barricaded inside, including 7 children ranging in age from 2 to 15. Burnsville police officers Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Rugg, and I apologize if I mispronounce these names, I do not mean to, and paramedic Adam Finseth put their lives on the line to try and save those that couldn't save themselves, and they ended up paying the ultimate price for doing what they felt was right. They died as heroes. When I first heard this news, I was seriously so devastated, so heartbroken that a tragedy had happened and keeps happening, it feels like. I felt so sad for everyone involved in this situation, including the families of those heroes, the teams that they worked on, the community, the emergency services systems in the entire world. They're trying to do their best to make this world safer to us. They're trying to show up for those that can't show up for themselves. And it really hurts sometimes when they have to pay the ultimate price for us to be kept safe. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so emotional, but I will continue. Shortly after hearing this news, my phone, all on its own, started playing Nickelback's Hero song that was written specifically for the 2002 superhero Spider-Man movie. I immediately was given the impression that these 3 heroes' souls had made it safely to the other side. They were not stuck in limbo anywhere, but were watching over their family and friends from the other side. My brother is part of a small town's volunteer fire and ambulance team. And after a particularly gruesome scene, I remember asking Spirit about him and expressing my concerns for his safety, his emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Spirit told me that my brother's soul had been in these types of roles in other lifetimes before, and it's something he signed up for again this time. They said not to worry about him. It's his life, and he is doing what he is called to do. That doesn't mean that a tragedy couldn't befall him. But my takeaway from that conversation was this. Regardless of how it all shakes out, my brother is going to honor his soul's choice and what he feels as part of his passion and calling while he is here. It's part of who he is, the person that I love as my brother. It makes him the man that he is. His compassion, his love, his loyalty, his bravery, his courage. It's who he is. And I imagine that those 3 first responders were the same way. They must have had a strong desire to make the world a better place. That's who they are. That's part of why I love them, is because they are so giving and they are so kind and they are so compassionate and they are so loving and they are so brave and courageous and they are willing to put their lives on the line to make this world better for their families, for the people they love, for their communities. And they should be honored for that. I'm not going to lie. I was reluctant to create a podcast episode about this situation. However, the signs that I have been receiving make me think that Spirit wants me to create this podcast episode. Tragedies such as this are always difficult for me to process. I always wonder why it's necessary for innocents to lose their lives. I've spoken to Spirit about this many times in the past. The answer boils down to something along the lines of, you don't have to like it or even understand it entirely. These things will continue to be a possibility because everyone has free will. Everyone has the same free will in which they choose to exercise. Every time they make a decision or choose to pursue one avenue over another. Just as that first response team chose to show up and to try to negotiate for a peaceful outcome for all, that suspect chose to shoot at them before ending their own life. To quote Spirit, We don't have to like it, but we do choose how we respond to it. And I love how this community chose to respond to this situation. Around 10,000 people showed up to honor and pay tributes to these brave men at their memorial service. GoFundMe accounts were set up to support their families. The outpouring of love and support was beautiful. I'm sure that I am not alone in saying that I always hate tragedies, but I equally love how, in the end, love truly does prevail. When I asked Spirit why they wanted me to share this story, I get the response that they wanted me to spread healing. I'm honestly not sure how to do that exactly, but I will certainly do my best. A couple years ago, Spirit taught me to be conscious of the type of energies that I send out to families like this that are in mourning. They said that what the energy that they really need sent to them is love. I know my first instinct when I hear of a person's passing, especially in any case where it's unexpected, is this, oh no, those poor families, how are they going to process going through life without so and so? And at one point, I tried to send healing energy out to a widow and her young kids when their dad died unexpectedly in an accident. And Spirit stopped me and told me that the last thing that family needed was more poor you, so sorry, victimhood energy. Instead, they had me pause and visualize the brightest, most loving light I possibly could, the purest light. And then they also had me infuse a little bit of resilience and strength in that light. And then they had me send this light and have it picture it going completely around this family in their time of grief and giving them the strength and the love and the support that they truly needed. So I ask you at this time to do the same for this family and all affected by this tragedy. Please send them the brightest, most loving, powerful light, strength, and resilience as they mourn through this loss. As you can imagine, I have also asked Spirit about premature deaths, like childhood deaths, or someone that died in the 30s or 40s, or, beyond, like all of the deaths that don't seem like they're natural, and why that occurs. And as you can imagine, it's not a simple answer. There are so many things that go into what causes those that we don't have access to. For example, the reason that soul chose to incarnate in the first place. Maybe they had a really terrible experience the lifetime before, and they only wanted to incarnate for a younger lifespan, so their soul could experience joy and unconditional love, and then get back out before the more mature lessons and responsibilities would take hold. Maybe their soul wasn't ready for those. I know that it's difficult to comprehend from an incarnated soul perspective, but some people really don't come here to outlive their parent. And as a parent myself, I know how hard that is to understand. I'm with the rest of you that believe it's not right for a parent to have to mourn the loss of a child. However, in an expanded perspective, I can understand that it isn't the reality we live in. It's similar to how I may really want and expect option A, even though I've already found that the door has been closed in that path. But just because I know that it's no longer a possibility, it doesn't stop me from wanting it to be the reality. And I think it's important that we understand that we don't know all the details. We're not giving all the details when we have our children. We don't remember why they were coming and what their soul mission is and what their purpose is and how long they are expecting to live. And even if we did, there are so many different contingency plans that are created for if they get down here and they're not learning the lessons that they wanted to, and it's where they can choose to leave and go back so they're not incurring any more damage or karma to their soul. And for us to think that we know all situations and we know why everything always happens is just not the case. And I understand from a human perspective how hard that is, because I can't even imagine any of you people that have lost your kids. I can't imagine the pain of that. And I don't even know. I don't have words. I can't. But what I do want to say from a spiritual perspective is that I honor you and I respect you and I have the utmost love for you because you chose to take on that soul. You chose to have them as your child and you gave them an opportunity to learn something and you do that you can. And I don't want you to walk around feeling guilt or grief that you should have done more because you don't know that that's the case. So I'm trying here as another parent, reaching out to another parent to please offer you a little healing energy to at least give yourself the opportunity to look at that situation from a different perspective and say, maybe this isn't my fault. Maybe there wasn't anything I could do. And instead of berating yourself about it, give yourself love because you gave that soul an opportunity to live. Regardless of how it turned out, you did that. And I know that they appreciate that. And I know that they're not gone entirely. They're still with you in a different way. I believe that healing comes from understanding that for whatever reason, the people we once loved are no longer part of our physical experience. We can choose to hold on to the anger, the grief, etc., over their passing, or we can choose to accept the loss in our own ways and celebrate the life that they had led with us. We can remember them and love them and be grateful for the time that we had together. I also believe that our loved ones are always available to us when we need them. They experience life with us. They are only a thought away. They send us signs and synchronicities to let us know that they are still with us, supporting us and loving us. Death isn't a final goodbye. It's merely an ending of the way of interacting together in a physical way, but it's an opportunity for a new way of interaction together. It may take some time to work out how you communicate to each other in this way, kind of like learning a foreign language. But I know that with time, you can all figure it out. It can actually be lots of fun, too, if you are open to these experiences. It's kind of funny because one of the signs I received to create this podcast episode was an Abraham Hicks video that popped up on my newsfeed about Jerry Hicks's how he died. At an Abraham Hicks seminar, one of the participants asked how Jerry died. Jerry is Esther's husband. Abraham explained how they, Esther and Jerry, had created some resistance around death by thinking they needed to be physically together to be a good, cohesive team. In the end, Abraham says, people keep taking these death situations and wanting to compare the rightness and the wrongness and the rightness and the wrongness. We say there is no wrongness. There's only rightness. You see, Esther didn't like hearing this from us at the moment in time that she heard it, but she understands it fully now. At that time, though, she had said, Abraham, I can see what's happening, and I want you to know that I like it not one bit. Abraham said to her, we know, but you don't get a vote on this. In other words, this is between Jerry and his source. This is between Jerry and his purpose for being. You have an option, Esther. You can experience it in joy, or you can experience it in pain. And she chose joy. The video also explained that after some time, Esther realized that she hadn't lost Jerry at all. He was still with her, experiencing life in a more connected way than ever before. This video validated my own experiences with this topic so much that I just knew I had to create this podcast episode. If you are able to right now is over, after you are done listening to this, I would like you to take a moment to listen to Lone Star's I'm Already There and view it from a perspective as if it's an answer to you from one of your loved ones that are in the non-physical. They want me to tell you they won't miss any important moments in your life, and they will be there with you in any moment that you think of them or need them. And if you needed any more validation of the support of the message in today's podcast episode, this is so crazy. I still am just like, this is awesome. But I was sitting down to finish writing notes about what I wanted to talk about yesterday. And as I sat down, I looked over and there was a dove, like a little dove statue on our side table. And I was like, where did that come from? And I looked at my daughter and I was like, what is this doing here? Where did this come from? It's like, oh, Dad was outside playing with us and he found it in the rocks. We have an angel statue that this dove used to be a part of. And apparently last fall, it must have fallen off and we never noticed it. And it's been sitting in those rocks since probably last October, November, whoever knows when it fell off. But that's when we would have took the statue in. And no one noticed it. But on the day that I'm sitting down to write this topic about death and how we're all connected and how even in death, our relationships are still there and that love is eternal and love always wins. There's this dove that's found. Honestly, you guys, that's so crazy to me. And I have been working with spirit for how many years now? And still, synchronicities like that are just, they just leave me so in awe. They leave me so excited about the opportunities that are out there and how we can create with our loved ones in the non physical and how fun and how interactive they still can be with you. I don't think a dove is significant or see how that plays into anything. I Googled spiritual sign of a dove, and the very first symbolism that popped up says doves are often seen as symbols of peace, spirituality, hope, renewal, transformation, and love, explains Johanna Augusta, a numerologist and owner of the Ministry of Numerology. They can also represent compassion and kindness to others during difficult transitions. Y'all, that's what this whole episode is about. Everything in there is in this episode. It's about finding peace in the fact that even when your loved ones are gone, they're not really gone. It's about your loved ones transitioning and about the families that we're sending the love and compassion to while they are in a process of transitioning their relationship with their loved ones to the non-physical. It's all about hope, love, and renewal and transformation. Like, I could not have found a better symbol if I had tried. And that is what playing and working with spirit is like. I love it. I really hope that you were able to gain something from this episode today. And I hope that if nothing else, when you think of death, you at least question the finality of it. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I wish you the most love, light, and inspiration. With all of my love, Yara Rose.